Is Joker 2 as bad as everyone is saying?
You've seen it. Is it everything you expected?
Pretty much, yeah. I walked out of this movie feeling empty. The best way I can describe this movie is that it feels like a fever dream of a fan-made sequel to the first movie. And giving credit where credit is due, the cinematography, the set pieces, the acting, all good. But the actual plot and the executions of the themes that it's portraying, not good at all. I'm gonna do spoiler free first and then go into spoilers really quickly because one, I don't think it's bad if you get spoiled to this movie, and two, I gotta talk about some of these things. My two biggest gripes are one, the portrayal of the messages, and two, the musical. Because the first movie advocates for mental health fairly well, but this one does it abysmally, and it drops the ball on all the messages it's trying to convey. And as a musical, didn't work, not at all. The concept of a Joker musical was so cool to me, and one of actually the driving forces why I was somewhat excited for this movie. But again, the execution was so poorly done. With the exception of one scene, all the musical elements felt so out of place. They were fun and stylized, but they also felt out of place again, except for like maybe one scene. And speaking of the musical elements, let's talk about Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn, or the lack thereof, because Harley Quinn doesn't need to be in this movie, and she's also barely in it. So if you're looking forward to her singing and all the musical elements with her, don't, because also most of them were cut. Which also explains why her character feels half-baked and just doesn't feel like it needs to be there. And I'm gonna talk about the ending and spoilers, but people are really hating the ending of the movie, and I think it's okay and could have been good, but then it kind of throws in fan service and it does kind of ruin it a little bit. And most people's reviews I've been seeing have been saying, oh, it's gonna be a very divisive movie. I disagree. I don't think most people, if any, are gonna really like this movie. As out of the dozens of reviews that I've been looking for, I think I've seen like one or two people somewhat like it. I think this is just a definitive flop. But enough of that, because we gotta talk about spoilers. Where to begin? With the musical, all the cool scenes in the trailer where Joker's being Joker are pretty much the musical scene. What also is annoying about that is that all the cool Joker doing cool Joker things, all dream sequences. Doesn't even happen in the movie. Which is a shame because at the end of the first movie, we see that full transformation. Like my favorite scene from the first movie is when he's going down the hallway into the elevator and he gives that big smirk and you're like, oh, this is Joker. He's not that in this movie. This movie backtracks Arthur Fleck's character a lot. It makes you want to feel bad for Arthur way more in this movie than it does the previous, but it does it poorly because the movie's telling you to feel bad and you see little hints of why you should, but the execution, like it's very much trying to pull you to feel bad for Arthur, and I feel like you just don't. And in the same vein, the movie talks a lot about mental health. First of all, does a lot of poor diagnoses about characters, and has some very interesting ideas about putting people with mental problems on pedestals and making them characters and the harm that it can do to them and everyone else. But it doesn't follow through with that in a great way. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in connection with the whole mental health issue, bear with me for a second, is that this movie doesn't feel like a DC movie. It almost feels ashamed to be a comic book movie, which a lot of directors just don't want to direct comic book movies. They want to make them about the characters, but then they're like, oh, we don't want to make like the comics at all, which never turns out well. People harp on Christopher Nolan and Matt Reeves for making them grounded movies, but you can see the people behind the scenes care about comic books. Even recently with the Penguin, they changed Penguin's name from Oswald Cobblepot to Oz Cobb, and people were in an uproar. But if you watch the show, you can tell these people know Penguin well. They're just adapting him to make him more gritty. Which the name changes a whole different discussion, but you can see the connection. Versus here in this movie, this is not a Joker movie. This is not a Harley Quinn movie. The characters are barely characters. And one of the great ways you can see that is with Harvey Dent. Because one of the plot points in the movie is that Joker is trying to convince people that he has dissociative identity disorder. Or that's what his lawyer wants him to do. And one of the people prosecuting him is Harvey Dent, a character whose biggest deal in the comics is having dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality disorder. It's the whole two-faced shtick, and not once is it hinted at in this movie. Because we see Harvey Dent has some sort of grudge against Joker, but they don't ever explain it. And Harvey Dent's character, by the way, could be anyone. You can name him Bob and he'd be the same character. There's nothing about Harvey Dent that makes him seem like Harvey Dent. They could have done something really cool where maybe Harvey Dent has like this internalized hate about having DID and that's why he doesn't like the Joker, or he doesn't want someone to seem like they have DID when he himself is actually suffering with it. There's all these really cool ideas they could have played with and connected together, but they didn't. But back to the musical elements, let's talk about Lady Gaga, because everyone was so excited for her to be in this movie and to see her Harley Quinn Well, guess what? She's barely in this movie. Her character, like I said, is half-baked. You barely understand her motivations, you barely see any of it, and she just seems like a non-character. And let's say you're fine with the non-character part, but you want to see her sing. Well, we don't see her sing that much, and the little we do just isn't that good. Again, a Joker musical could have been really interesting, but the songs weren't that good, and the musical elements felt so out of place. It really affected the pacing for me, and it took me out every single time. The only scene is at the very end when they're doing that tap dancing scene. I'll probably throw in the footage here. Harley Quinn is such an interesting character, and they do make a cool change with her being obsessed with the Joker. It reminded me of the Batman TV show from all those years back. But then we barely see any of her. The movie just tells us things about her, and we do also see so little of her, so you don't know what to believe, and you feel no need to either root for her or root against her. Her character is just a mess. And like I said, tons of her scenes were cut. I'll probably make a separate short video about it, going through all the deleted scenes that we know about, but they look really cool in the trailers and then behind the scenes footage. But also, this movie is super long, like painfully so I wouldn't want to make this movie even longer. There's other scenes they totally could have gotten rid of. The whole plot of this movie is just kind of boring. The opening has a really cool animated sequence, and it kind of connects to the whole theme in the movie of, is Arthur Fleck actually the Joker, and is that actually part of him? The beginning first act is so boring and sluggish. It's not that it's poorly paced, it's just not interesting to watch. And then we get to the courtroom scenes, and again, just not that interesting. It's really just recanting the plot of the first movie and bringing back the old characters that we saw, trying to make you feel sympathetic for Arthur. And there's a cool scene when Arthur sort of embraces the Joker persona, and then his friend, I forget his name, sort of breaks him out of it, and it makes Arthur realize, oh, I'm not actually the Joker. That was a cool-ish scene. And lastly, third act goes bonkers. Arthur gives up on being the Joker. Bombs goes off. He escapes. He meets Harley, and she kind of just says goodbye, which is a very interesting idea, that she truly never really liked Arthur, that she just liked the Joker, which is really the idea of this movie, of don't put these people on pedestals who have these sort of personas, that's not who they really are, or people who just have mental issues, who need actual help. And then the very end that everyone is loving talking about right now is that we see one of the inmates kill Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and then it's revealed that this character starts laughing maniacally, carves a smile into his face, just like Heath Ledger's Joker, and he is the new real Joker. Which, here's my problem with that. I have no problem with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker dying. I think it actually makes sense, and it shows that when you put these people on pedestals, it can harm them and society at large. And it makes sense that the consequences of Arthur's actions and society's leads to his death. It's a very sad and tragic story. And I think it also makes sense that someone else would take up this Joker mantle. The idea of the carving the face, making it seem that this is the one true Joker, feels so fan service-y. And that's just responding to all the criticisms of the first movie. People saying, oh, this Joker could never fight Batman. Here's the actual Joker that really could fight Batman. I would have loved instead if we saw multiple different people who all look very different taking up the mantle of Joker, carrying on the legacy of the character, showing more the impact of Joker in society, which also is kind of the ending of the first movie though, which is one of the biggest gripes of this movie. We did not need a sequel to the first movie. It stands alone on its own, it doesn't set up the sequel, and the whole plot of this movie feels so forced. I truly believe Todd Phillips did not want to make this movie. I think it really makes sense that you can see he didn't have an idea for it because the plot is a mess. And like I said, it's not strictly speaking like the worst movie you've ever seen. There's a lot of great elements to it. At the end of the day, it's kind of boring and feels heartless. And like I said, it made me feel empty. I remember sitting back in the theater like, what did I just watch? Is it the worst movie ever? No. Do I recommend seeing it? No. And personally, I'm just excited that we're one day closer to the next episode of Penguin, and I'm really excited for more of James Gunn and Matt Reeves' DC movies, because those are going to be awesome and are two creators who clearly want to make more comic book and DC projects. Thank you all so much for listening. While I love making shorts, I've been trying to post more long videos as well. And if you want to hear more about Joker 2 but don't want to see it, I'll be making videos on all of Lady Gaga's deleted scenes and a short talking about the ending of Joker a little bit more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.